And a look now at the 2016 elections and gun policy. Representatives from the Firearms Coalition, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, and other groups addressed the 30th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference in Phoenix. This portion is just over 40 minutes.
Well, the 2016 elections are going to be here before we know it, and we need to be engaged now. Let me start off by saying we all owe Hillary Clinton a very big thank you. Why? Her anti-gun rights rhetoric and record are going to ensure that the result is going to be a record turnout of gun owners in the 2016 elections. She's already decided to double down on Barack Obama's anti-gun assault on our rights to get her party's nomination. And the energized gun owners who turn out to vote in record numbers are going to impact not just the presidential race, but every race on the ballot, down ballot, from the U.S. Senate all the way down to dog catcher. It will impact every Democrat on the ballot, and like it or not, Democrats have made gun control an extremely partisan issue. Well, not all Democrats are anti-gun, and not all Republicans are pro-gun rights. The party that controls Congress or a state legislature controls that flow of legislation, and it's important to our whole battle and struggle for the right to keep and bear arms. The importance of the presidential election, of course, cannot be limited at all. For us, judicial appointments are critical to our continued success in the courts. And believe me, our opponents would love to shut that courthouse door in our face. Only a few cases ever reach the Supreme Court of the United States. Judicial nominations to the lower courts are very important and always fly below the radar. We have seen the damage to the Second Amendment rights that many of Obama's nominees have done to us in courtrooms from Massachusetts to California. I can only think of 2 lower court judges appointed by Democrats that have voted to overturn anti-gun rights laws. And of course, we have the United States Supreme Court, where no Democratic appointee has voted for gun rights. Believe me, if Hillary Clinton is elected president, all those nominations to the courts are going to be worse. And we can't forget the importance of the U.S. Senate election. The Senate confirms those nominees to the courts. So let's take a look at the playing field for what we're dealing with in this 2016 election. The key to Senate control in 2016 presidential election is going to be down to just a few states. So we'll state by state a little bit, we'll look at this. If the GOP presidential ticket wins even by a hair, it will be exceptionally difficult for Democrats to take back the U.S. Senate. On the other hand, if Democratic squeaks through its presidency and captures the Senate, the victory may be by a couple percentage points and will do the trick against us. Most analysts acknowledge that Democrats have a plausible chance of taking a minimal victory in the U.S. Senate. The Democrats need to gain 4 seats to control the Senate if a Democratic president gets elected, because they have the vote of the vice president of the Senate. Otherwise, they need 5. 5 might be a little bit of a heavy lift to capture the Senate on the election map. There's only a certain number of states that are in play. Those states are Florida, Illinois, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If you're from those states, that's really the battleground in this election. Moreover, Democrats have to hold shaky Senate seats in Colorado and Nevada. Other than Illinois, these are states that should be very competitive for the race for the White House, which will make the presidential coattails all that more important. Because the route to a Democratic majority is difficult, the Republicans are still more likely to keep the majority than the Democrats are to grab it. At least a small net gain for the GOP is expected, though. Not losing any net seats probably requires a Republican nominee to not only win the presidency, but to capture more than 300 electoral votes, something no Republican has done since George Bush Sr. in 1988. The importance of the U.S. House of Representatives is also extremely important to us. It's our firewall. It guarantees that no anti-gun legislation can ever get to a president's desk. The U.S. House is where we're able to stop the whole Obama agenda. And with Hillary Clinton, it's going to be, if she's elected, it'll be twice as important. Obama took office in 2009 with 60 Democrats in the U.S. Senate, counting 2 independents that caucused with his party. And he had 257 seats in the House of Representatives. Today, there are only 46 members of the Senate in the Democratic caucus, the worst showing since the first year after the Ronald Reagan landslide. Across the Capitol, in the House, there were 188 Democrats. Now the Republicans have more seats than when Herbert Hoover took office in 1929. This is, however, is really the tip of the iceberg. When you look at the states, the collapse of the anti-gun rights Democrats' fortunes are even worse. Republicans now hold 31 governorships, 9 more than they had when Obama was inaugurated. During the last 6 years, the GOP has won governorships in purple and even deep blue states: Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, New Mexico, Nevada, Ohio. The last midterm elections, only one endangered Republican governor, Tom Corbett in Pennsylvania, was replaced by a Democrat. Sean Parnell in Alaska lost to an independent. Every other endangered Republican was returned to office. Now turn to the state legislatures. Although if you're a loyal Democrat, you may want to avert your eyes to this. In 2009, Democrats were in full control of 27 state legislatures. Republicans had control, full power, in only 14. Now the GOP is in full control of 30 state legislatures. The Democrats hold power in just 11. In 24 states, Republicans controlled the governorship in both houses of the legislature, giving them a total control over the political process. That increased power at the state level has already led to serious consequences for both Democrats and the anti-gun rights lobby. For their political future and for their goals have been put in jeopardy. The gun rights movement has already identified over 16 million gun owners who are registered to vote. Voter registration and turnout projects are on schedule to double that number by Election Day 2016. And most of that work is being done in battleground states and contested congressional districts. This data vault, so to speak, is important to defeating Bloomberg's attempt at any ballot measures in states like Nevada, Maine, and coming up here probably in Arizona. We also have to remember, by the way, that with independent expenditures and Bloomberg's track record in the 2014 elections, he is planning on spending millions of dollars out of his own pocket targeting just certain pro-gun members of Congress and the Senate to try and make an example out of somebody who supports gun rights that he can say he took down. So our work is really cut out for us. The latest polling data should also give our opponents heartburn. The latest CNN poll, just out a few days ago, asked, in your view, do existing gun laws make it too easy for people to buy guns, too difficult, or just about right? Half the respondents, 49%, thought the laws were just about right. Certainly this is good news for pro-gun candidates, but this news should give Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Michael Bloomberg, and his Everytown group a migraine headache. That 10% responded that the current laws buying a gun are too difficult. When you add the 10% to the 49%, it gives us 59% supporting laws the way they are, with no changes, no more gun control, no new bills passed. So that's good news for us and for our candidates. But of course, what the other side tries to do is rebrand it. They don't try to sell it as gun control in the elections. You won't see that. You'll see it try to be sold as common sense proposals under mental health issues, under various preventative causes, anything domestic violence. They're not going to talk about gun control. They know that's a losing proposition, except for Hillary Clinton, who's doubled down on it. That's why we owe her a big thank you. That's good news for us. Now, next year's Gun Rights Policy Conference is in Tampa, Florida, a key battleground state. The odds are that state will determine the future of our gun rights in its 2016 elections. And with your help, we will turn out the gun vote like never before. For all of us, the 2016 election, again, starts today. In 2016, we must fight to win. Thank you.
Does anybody know what I'm about to say? Good morning, gun lobby. A Knox has made that greeting from the GRPC microphone for almost every year of the past 30 years, and I'm proud to do it again this year. But this year I want to change it up just a little bit. Good morning, gun voters. You know, when we talk about lobbying, we're talking about legislation. We're talking about influencing those that we have elected to do what we want them to do, what we hired them to do. When we talk about gun voters, we're talking about getting those guys in. And we can't separate the two. We can, often we do, but we shouldn't. Lobbying and political action on the election front are both critical to long-term survival and winning. And unlike the rumors that the naysayers say, Alan and I, NRA, GOA, we're not in this business to drag it out and make money. We're in this business because we believe in it and it's what we do. I would much rather have a real job where I go to real regular hours, come home to my family, go out shooting every now and then, than to spend 14 hours a day with a laptop computer in my lap, plugging away, researching and writing, and trying to get the message out to those who don't understand why it's so critical that we defend our rights. In the coming election, 2016, it's racing up on us. We've got a crowded field on the Republican side, and I just want to comment. Yesterday, for the second time that I've been in attendance to a GRPC, we had a presidential candidate in the room. He spoke with us. He endorsed our positions. Yesterday, when Governor Jim Gilmore was in this room, I would be willing to bet that there were at least 200 armed people around him at all times. I don't think Governor Gilmore was worried about it, do you? No. You're not a threat. You're the good guys.
The safest room in the state, right?
That's right. So it's the safest room in the state, as Bob said. There's a lot of information out there, and information is the power of politics. If you want to win elections, you have to have information. And part of the critical information that you need is information about the candidates, where they stand, what they stand for. Do they really mean what they say? Have they proven that they mean what they say? What did they say a couple of years ago? What are they saying now? How is it different? There are lots of sites out there. There's lots of research out there. NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, has their Gun Vote project online. Good information, good resources. The NRA, Gun Owners of America. Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, the various state organizations, the Arizona Citizens Defense League, of which I am a proud New Life member. They offered me a deal. They said, well, we can add up all of the years that you've been a member, and we can, here's how much it'll cost you to go life, Jeff. So I did that yesterday, and I'm glad to have done it. But all of those information sites, digging around out there, we've come up with something several years ago, and each election cycle we build it back up again, and then it kind of dies off. It's called gunvoter.org. gunvoter.org, gunvoter.org. How many of you play out on the internet? You get out there, you surf. Forums? Anybody addicted to forums? Gunvoter.org is a forum site. It's user-driven. The objective is for you to bring information to gunvoter.org from all of those other sites that you visit, or your personal knowledge, and tell everybody else where this candidate stands, what he's saying about the issues, what he's done about the issues, what she wants to do about the issues, and most importantly, the voting records. Votes, votes, votes. Votes are your best indicator of where somebody stands, and that's why right now, my critical issue, along with getting you to come to gunvoter.org and participate in that conversation, my critical issue is Representative Rob Bishop's bill to delete the sporting purpose language from the Gun Control Act. I don't know about you, but I've never found the word sporting purpose in the Constitution. I don't find it in the Second Amendment, and it's been the law that some bureaucrat is deciding what you or I can import or possess or purchase based on his determination, her determination of what meets some sporting purpose criteria. That's absolutely wrong. One of the issues that's been discussed is some division amongst gun groups and rights advocates. I'm a firm supporter of national reciprocity, but there's some division in the House regarding national reciprocity and whether it's a wise move to push. When it comes to removing the sporting purpose language, I don't think there's anybody in this room or in the rights movement who would disagree that that needs to happen. And that's a vehicle for getting votes. We need to be pushing the House and the Senate today to push this bill to get the votes so that we have the ammunition that we need. We know who's on our side and who's not on our side, and we know who to vote for come 2016. That's the objective, and that's what we want to do with gunvoter.org and bring that in. Now, a lot of you know that I'm not a specialist. I don't focus in one area. I'm kind of eclectic. I get around, I do a lot of things. I'm interested in a lot of things. As I listen to the panels here, one after the other, there's always something that I want to comment on, something I want to add. As we talk about the emotion, I want to bring up a story. A few years ago, I was testifying before the DC City Council, and Marion Barry, Council Member Marion Barry, former mayor of DC, gave an emotional plea talking about all of the funerals that he had attended due to gun violence. And I got my opportunity at the microphone, and I gave my little spiel, and I said, and before I go, I want to say something to Mayor Barry about those funerals, because I want to tell you about the funerals that I haven't attended. I didn't attend a funeral for my great-grandmother before I was born. I didn't my family didn't have to attend her funeral when she was alone with her 4 siblings in a farmhouse in Louisiana, and a disgruntled former employee was kicking on the door declaring how he was going to murder all of them, and she stood alone in the front room with a shotgun and defended her family and survived. I didn't have to attend the funeral of my grandmother and my aunt when they were in a remote location in New Mexico and were assaulted by a man with a large knife. And my grandmother pulled her pistol from her purse and said, "You get back." And they survived. I didn't have to attend the funeral of either of my sisters on 2 separate occasions. One when a man came into our home and my little sister was home alone and met him at the top of the stairs with a gun, and she survived. When my other sister, my older sister, stopped in at a rest stop on the highway to take care of a little bit of business on a long trip, and someone assaulted her in the stall in the bathroom, and she had a gun and she survived. As Alan Corwin has told us, guns save lives. Guns are what separate the good guys from the bad guys and give us the ability to defend against those willing to do evil against us. And so, let's never forget that if it saves one life, the life it saves just might be yours. Anyway, to wrap things up, I just want to say thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to the Leadership Institute's program across the way this afternoon. If you can attend, it's always worthwhile. Morton's programs are spectacular. Alan, this has been a great conference, and we're glad that all of you guys could come out. Votes, your vote, every vote matters, but right now the votes that matter the most are the votes in Congress to let us know where these folks really stand. So I urge you to urge your politicians, your elected servants, the guys who are supposed to be working for you, to vote on the Bishop bill, to vote on national reciprocity, and give us the ammunition we need to move forward on gunvoter.org and other sites that are mobilizing the rights movement to get the right people elected to defend our rights. I'm Jeff Knox with the Firearms Coalition. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Alan. We have finished a little early, so we will have more time for questions. If you have a question, I'd like you to line up over here to my left and be prepared to state your name and location and ask a question. Now, some of our panelists from this morning have had to fly the coop, so they may not be here, but we'll do our best. If other morning panelists are available, they don't have to come all the way up on the stage, but if they want to hang out over there or down near the, or come on up on the stage, we will do our best to answer all the questions. But, like Alex Tridebeck, I will say to you, please, in the form of a question. If you have statements to make later, that's what the hallway's for. If you want to engage in an extended dialogue with one of our panelists, again, I'm sure they'd be happy to see you out in the hall. So we're gonna get started. Again, if you would state your name and state, and your question, if you want to direct it specifically to a panelist, give us that panelist's name. Yes?
Pass the mic
Hang on, Steve.
Try it again. Is the switch on that mic, or is there a switch?
Hey, I bet you it's better with the switch on.
Works better when you turn it on.
Go ahead, sir. No, you'll have to come up here.
Into the mic, please.
1, 2. Oh, just get closer? Okay. My name is Steve Mead. I'm a county commissioner from Anderson County, Tennessee. Longtime member of the SAF, NRA, and you name it. And I have just one fairly broad question that I think I could go to a lot of people, but somebody may have some answer. Why is it not a federal civil rights crime for Michael Bloomberg and his kind to organize and fund a conspiracy to deprive United States citizens of fundamental constitutional rights?
Oh, no, this is not working. Okay.
All the mics are on.
Okay.
Yes, but I believe we're speaking from the podium, so the television cameras are focused on the podium, or you're not there. The problem is the courts historically have ruled that people have First Amendment rights to do these kinds of things. And the only way, your only recourse is to either use your First Amendment rights to combat it back, or to use your voting rights at the ballot box to defeat them and remove them from public office. And so while we can argue that it's a conspiracy to deprive our rights and that you'll be put in jail, it just isn't going to happen.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. If I can move over to the big mic. I have a very quick answer. I think we need to use our billionaires against their billionaires.
Kind of. My only question there, Neil, is where are they? Where are our billionaires? Because I really, really want to meet them.
Donald Trump.
I'm not sure he's ours.
He has a Second Amendment.
Okay, all right. Who's our next question? Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hi,
let me
Peggy,
just-
thank
let me
you.
just say, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. My candidate in 2016 is Nobody, the Vote for Nobody campaign. But I will say that Donald Trump has a Second Amendment statement on his webpage, second to none.
Yeah, it's good. Hi, Bob.
Thank you. My name is Bob Culver. I'm a semi-retired engineer living in Wyoming now. I escaped from Maryland in the form of a question, as you say, Peggy. The question is to the folks who are talking about the NFA regulations and the $200 tax that got imposed. I'm going to reiterate, why was that tax imposed? Now, the person that answered that question for me out in the hall, actually, I kind of answered it for him, is that because under the Second Amendment, they could not regulate those firearms. They had to find a dodge. That was a tax. That same thing is going to be applied for ammo and everything else that we hear about today. So just remember that. They realize they can't do some things under the Second Amendment, but they seem to find ways around it.
Right, absolutely right, Bob.
Yes, sir.
There wasn't a question there?
Well, we're grading on a curve.
Hi there, I'm Ed Vallejo. I'm a local area activist here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've had a wonderful time this weekend. I've heard infringed and infringement several times. My question is, why is it I never hear necessary for the security of a free state? Thank you.
You want me to take a stab at it?
There is no doubt that that's part of the Second Amendment. And there's no doubt that the Second Amendment was written to keep us, secure as a free state. And that one of the problems the Founding Fathers saw was the federal government running away with people's rights and wanted to make sure you had the right, basically, like it or not, to rebel. But in today's context, in the modern world, we're pretty much looking more at fighting it as an individual right battle and not worrying about protecting the free state. It's more protecting us at our home. And what we're relying on a whole lot right now is two key Supreme Court cases. You know, the Heller case and the McDonald case that talk about you having an individual right to own a firearm to protect yourself. Those didn't really talk very much about protecting your free state. And when you're looking at attacking these anti-gun laws that are put in place that are screwing up our gun rights, they're all basically aimed at us as individuals. So you don't hear a whole lot about it because in the context of the modern debate and the current battle, that's not the front line, I guess.
Sure, go ahead, Alan.
Since you asked, Peggy, I'll make a general comment about that. The founders noted that if we didn't have moral people in government, that the Constitution and the whole concept of self-governance wouldn't work. And we don't have strongly moral people in government. I think we've recognized that on both sides of the aisle. So the 10th Amendment, for example, which says that all powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the people and the states respectively. So we have the government regulating all sorts of things that they're not empowered to do. There's no legitimate delegated authority to control education, energy, drugs, all these things that the federal government has taken upon itself. It has no legitimate delegated authority to do. So if you find it regulating in the area of the Second Amendment and gun rights, or your medical care, or energy policy, or education at the state level, we have people who are not moral, who are not following the Constitution from top to bottom, and that's creating problems with our nation across the board. It seems to me like the last time the federal government actually looked at the Constitution to see if we had power to do the things they're doing was in implementation of the federal highway system, where they called it the Federal Defense Highway System and said we need this so that we can defend the nation adequately and move troops in time of emergency, and justified it on that basis. And when Bob spoke about the NFA, they said, well, we can't regulate the guns because of the Second Amendment, but perhaps we can tax them, and that would be okay. And they applied a $200 tax, which at the time was a year's salary. So that would regulate them almost totally without infringing on the Second Amendment. It was a sort of roundabout way to do it, but they figured we can get away with it. And now, government just does whatever it wants, regardless of the 10th Amendment that says you can't, and they just do it, and there's no morality there controlling them, and the founders are right. No moral people in government, or very few, and government has run amok, and we find ourselves in a dastardly state of affairs.
Alan, we're going to take two more questions. I don't know why you people are so shy and you don't line up when I tell you to line up. So we've got one question here and the next question here, and then we're going to allow C-SPAN to take down their cameras, and then we'll go into resolutions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Byron Baker from Sun City West, Arizona. I have a question, and I'm looking for comments and possibly some advice on future activities that we might participate in as carriers. There is that arena of intimidation and an as yet unnamed army that's developing against all carriers throughout the nation, a practice called swatting, where any citizen can yell gun like fire in a theater, and there's a moral imperative on the part of law enforcement to come immediately to the area where gun has been sighted, in a shopping mall, a theater, on the sidewalks, getting out of your car at a grocery store. And I guess to condense it, my question is going to be, what would be my legal response in case I am swatted by somebody who is hysterical or is now a member of this unnamed army that feels like in Hitlerian Germany you're supposed to cheat or betray your neighbor if they were housing somebody, for example. I don't want to be swatted, but I feel like if I am, I'm going to need some kind of legal recourse, and I wonder what the organizations might do to inform the general public about their obligation and the responsibility they have in case some victimhood is created like you talked about yesterday.
The first thing is survive the situation.
Thank you.
Number one is survive it. And that means absolute compliance with the police when they show up because they've been told there's a man with a gun and they're possibly jittery. But after surviving it, and actually it's the Violence Policy Coalition has been pushing this concept of swatting on their Facebook and Twitter feeds, and it's vile. It is illegal for someone to give a false report. And if they exaggerate that report, we had a guy killed at a Costco in Las Vegas because the reports were exaggerated. He walked out the door and the police shot him. It was a horrible thing. But as far as legal consequences or backing up, I think that the organizations that we have would try and back you up and try and support you if we could find an angle for it. But it's a very difficult situation. It really is. It's dangerous.
I think we've accomplished a great deal by just making us aware of the fact that it could happen.
Right. Thank you.
And Charles Heller from his perch over there wanted to take
The Arizona,
credit.
sir, that just asked a question. The Arizona Citizens Defense League is looking at that for this legislative session. We had an incident of exactly that happen in Flagstaff last week with a retired peace officer who's also disabled. The store there that used to be, I can't think of the name of the store. It's a chain that was recently acquired. The store called police and accused him of waving a gun around, and he got swatted. And he has agreed to come and testify before if we run a bill from the Citizens Defense League, and we're looking at doing that. You should all look at our website, azcdl.org, for updates on that. I don't know if Dave Kopp, the president, is here. I know Fred Dank, the treasurer, is here, and Tom Woodrow, who's up here with me, is also on the board. You can talk to us about it afterwards. And who's in the back? I don't. Oh, and Drake is back there too, who's on the board, and he's in the room, and you can talk to him about it. Thank you.
Okay, Neil, I'll give you.
azcdl.org, and look for updates and legislation.
I'm going to basically use my skills as a writer to suggest a strategy. If somebody yells gun, and you are the person carrying the gun, yell police, because that has two meanings. One is that it implies that you are police, but it also implies that you're calling for the police. It might defuse the situation and save lives.
And our last question, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Johnny Dean from San Antonio, Texas. My question is in regards to gun-free zones. What strategy can we have to hold the owners of the gun-free zones accountable when they disarm us and then something bad happens? How do we put teeth into it, especially corporate entities that disarm us and they feel that there is absolutely no negative side to it?
Well, what we have to do is create negative sides to it, and the best way with that is legislatively by putting teeth in the law that if you basically do that, you become liable to the person who becomes the victim. And as you have the liability now, and the victim can sue you, and the way the statute gets written, it puts the burden of proof back on the business that said you created the gun-free zone and said you couldn't defend yourself. And it empowers victims to be able to sue. And then attorneys for all the big corporations who want to take that position take a look at it and say, you know, there's more risk for us to be a gun-free zone than not to be a gun-free zone.
So it's really a legislative solution rather than a personal lawsuit solution.
Well, I think the legislation empowers the personal lawsuits by making the laws more in the favor of the plaintiff.
Thank you.
Here in Arizona, twice now, we've introduced the Gun-Free Zone Liability Act, which says if a place disarms you that way with a make-believe gun-free zone, in other words, a sign on the wall, and you're harmed by that sign, they bear liability for that if you're harmed. Now, we haven't gotten it enacted yet, but we've introduced it twice. We've modified the bill to improve it, and you bring up a very good point. The right to keep and bear arms is a specific enumerated right. That's what it was called in the Heller case. And the idea that they can just deny your civil rights is prohibited under 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242. If you deny a person's civil rights under color of law, that's a federal felony. And they think they can do this with impunity. Now, there's a conflict between private property rights and your right to keep and bear arms. In your home, you can deny a fat person, a woman, a gay and lesbian person, a gun owner. You can deny almost anybody to come into your home. But in a store, if you own a candy store, you can no longer deny any person access. But they believe they can deny you access if you exercise your civil right to arms. And this is an untested area of law, but we intend to test it. And we intend to introduce this bill again over and over around the country. It's been introduced elsewhere, the Gun-Free Zone Liability Act, where if you deny a person their right to keep and bear arms and they're harmed by that, you incur liability. And the classic case is the Luby's massacre in Texas, where Susanna Gracia Hupp left her gun in the car, a madman came in, killed 23 people, she had a clear shot at him, and because of law, she couldn't shoot him, and both her parents were killed by the madman, and she was denied her right to have a firearm, which is a fundamental civil and human right. So this has to stop. And the public has to start becoming aware that these make-believe gun-free zones, these pretend gun-free zones, do nothing but protect the criminal. And we have that now in federal law. There was a military bill introduced, one of these Arm the Army bills, where the legislation says that the military recognizes that these make-believe gun-free zones are dangerous because we had military people shot by jihadis, a jihadi, in a place where they were not able to be armed, and they want to see it end. Well, the civilians want to see it end as well, and with a little luck, we'll get this done in due course.
Thank you, Alan. And now we're going to take about a 5-minute break while our C-SPAN cameras come down. We want to thank C-SPAN for covering it, and they will, yes, round of applause for C-SPAN.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.